updated subject to sale addendum. We have updated this to make some corrections that we believe will be helpful for everyone in their business. And so here we go. Here's our subject to sale addendum. Of course, at the top it has the buyer and seller names along with the address of the property being purchased and the offer for real estate. That'll be the date on the purchase contract. Here, the highlighted items are the ones that have changed. So this first one, buyer and seller agree that the actual closing date will not exceed blank number of days. So this would be like 45 days, 60 days from the removal of this subject to sale, unless otherwise agreed in writing by the buyer and seller. This addendum will supersede and control any other document in this agreement relating to the date of closing. This is simply to set expectations for a buyer and seller that once the property is sold, that needs to be sold in order to purchase, an expectation is set of how long it will take to close after that. And of course, it can always be changed later. And so that's just an expectation setter. This purchase agreement is contingent upon the sale of close of escrow of the buyer's property located at. This is where you put the address and then either say it is listed for sale with Keller Williams Siouxland or in escrow. And if it is under contract, you put the title or closing company and the date it's scheduled to close. This next section has some more updates. If buyer has not accepted an offer on buyer's property on or before, and this is where you put basically a drop dead date for them to have the property sold. And if they don't, the offer shall be voidable by buyer or seller, or may be extended mutually if mutually agreed in writing. So if the property gets an offer on it, does not get an offer on it before such and such a date, then either party can decide if they want to keep going or cancel. Down to number 2, let's go through that here. Seller may demand removal of this contingency at any time by the service of a written notice to buyer or buyer's agent of acceptance of another bona fide offer for real estate, specifying that the buyer shall have, and this is where you put in the number of hours, 24, 48, 72 hours, excluding weekends and legal holidays, to remove this contingency under one of the following terms at buyer's discretion. And then there's a release of subject to sale form that we have as well. Buyer provide proof of sale of buyer's property listed above, and the purchase will then be subject to closing of buyer property. Or if the buyer's property is not sold, if buyer desires to continue the transfer, the seller must accept written notification that the seller is removing the contingency under one of the following conditions: a written bank approval that will qualify buyer to purchase without the sale of their contingent property, or they can provide proof of cash funds to close without the sale of the buyer contingent property. Number 4, in the event that the buyer has 0 hours notice pursuant paragraph 2, that's up here, to remove the contingency, then seller shall notify buyer or buyer's agent in writing of the offer for real estate is null and void and no longer of any force or effect, and all earnest money paid in escrow by buyer shall be returned to the buyer. And so that's basically saying, hey, they gave notice that they took another offer, they're going to give the earnest money back. And then we added this section down here. If checked, the following terms will apply. And so this is, of course, many terms of contracts are negotiable. And so this just clarifies if the earnest money will be delivered immediately or upon removal of subject to sale. So if this is checked, it will apply. Earnest money will be delivered upon removal of subject to sale. So if they're not going to give their earnest money right away, they would check that. The inspection period will start upon removal of the subject to sale contingency. Definitely recommend that, though it is optional. And then appraisal and title work will start upon removal of the subject to sale contingency. So this just clarifies a couple of things, whether or not they will apply. I know a lot of times we've seen in purchase agreements, people will put in other provisions, that the earnest money will be delivered upon removal of subject to sale, or about the inspections period or the appraisal and title work. And so that, and down at the bottom is the signatures, and that is the update to the subject to sale addendum.